Tonight, 3 people found out the same thing. The system had already decided before they called, before they wrote the letter, before they even asked why. A mother in Louisville who read the memo they never wanted her to see, a teacher in Phoenix who got a $12 check after 22 years, and a man in Columbus who had the most powerful woman in his neighborhood until he didn't. Stay for all 3, because the last one, you need to see that ending for yourself.
The memo.
I was standing in the Walgreens parking lot on Shelbyville Road when I read the letter. I still had my work lanyard on. 8-hour shift. Feet killing me. Rain getting into my collar. I'd been waiting 3 weeks for that letter. I already knew what they were going to say. I just didn't know why. 12 words. Surgical procedure deemed not medically necessary at this time. Request for pre-authorization denied. 12 words for my mother. 71 years old, spinal stenosis, couldn't walk 30 feet without stopping to catch her breath. 7 months she'd been waiting for that surgery. 12 words. I sat in my car, and I did something I almost never do. I cried. Not the quiet kind, the ugly kind, the kind you save for parking lots when nobody's watching. And then I stopped, wiped my face with my sleeve, and said one thing out loud. To nobody. Why? That question changed everything.
I was standing in the Walgreens parking lot on Shelbyville Road when I read the letter. I still had my work lanyard on. 8-hour shift, feet killing me, rain getting into my collar. I'd been waiting 3 weeks for that letter. I already knew what they were going to say. I just didn't know. Why? 12 words. Surgical procedure, deemed not medically necessary at this time. Request for pre-authorization, denied. 12 words. For my mother, 71 years old, spinal stenosis, couldn't walk 30 feet without stopping to catch her breath. 7 months she'd been waiting for that surgery. 12 words. I sat in my car. And I did something I almost never do. I cried, not the quiet kind, the ugly kind, the kind you save for parking lots when nobody's watching. And then I stopped, wiped my face with my sleeve, and said one thing out loud to nobody. Why? That question changed everything. I called Meridian Health Partners the next morning, before my shift, and 7:48 a.m. I waited on hold for 22 minutes. I counted every one. When someone finally answered, they said what all of them say. I understand your frustration, Ms. Mathers. The determination was made by our clinical review team, based on current medical guidelines. I asked, what guidelines? Which ones specifically? I'm not able to share that information at this time. Can I speak to the clinical reviewer? Those communications are internal. We can send you our standard appeal form. Of course you can. The form arrived, 14 pages. I filled it out at the kitchen table at midnight. Kids already asleep. Submitted it certified mail, kept the receipt. 3 weeks later, denied again. Different letter, same stamp. Appeal determination, denied. Our clinical review has upheld the original decision. The review took 12 minutes. I found that out later. 12 minutes to review 7 months of my mother's medical records. At that point, I stopped being sad. I got curious. I started digging. I wasn't a lawyer, wasn't a journalist. I was a pharmacy cashier who'd spent 10 years watching people fight insurance companies at the counter. And I knew one thing. When the answer doesn't make sense, someone knows why. I filed a formal complaint with the Kentucky Department of Insurance, Standard. I didn't expect much. 2 months later, I got a response, not from the department, from a paralegal at a consumer advocacy firm in Lexington. Her name was Donna Harwick. She'd seen my complaint in the public record. Ms. Mathers, I think your case is part of something larger. Can we talk? Donna had spent 3 years documenting denial patterns at Meridian. 38 cases, spinal procedures, cardiac pre-authorizations, oncology referrals, all denied by the same internal code, CR114. I'd never heard of CR114. Nobody had, because it wasn't in any public document. Donna slid a folder across the table. Inside, a 2-page internal memo from Meridian, dated 14 months earlier, signed by Brian Kohler, Director of Clinical Review. The highlighted line read, "Effective Q3, all spinal fusion pre-authorizations for members over 65 under Plan C and Plan D should default to CR114 pending secondary review. This is a cost containment measure consistent with our actuarial projections." I read it twice, then a third time. It wasn't that my mother's surgery wasn't necessary. It was that my mother was already on a list before she was ever sick enough to need it. The decision had been made before I ever picked up the phone. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me later. I just set the memo down, flat, carefully, like it was evidence, which it was. Donna connected me with a class action attorney. 41 plaintiffs, all Plan C or Plan D, all over 65, all coded CR114. I was plaintiff. Number 1. The Kentucky Department of Insurance launched an investigation. Meridian's lawyers said the memo was taken out of context. Our attorney put Brian Kohler under oath and asked him directly, "What does cost containment measure consistent with actuarial projections mean?" Kohler said, "It means we have to make difficult decisions about resource allocation." The attorney set a copy of the memo in front of him. 41 highlighted names. Did any of these 41 people get to participate in those decisions? Kohler paused. No. Meridian settled. $8.3 million across the class. All 41 surgeries pre-approved within 60 days. Brian Kohler resigned. The CR114 code was removed from Meridian's system entirely. The Kentucky Department of Insurance issued new guidelines requiring insurers to disclose cost containment codes to their members. My mother had her surgery 4 months after the settlement. She walked 30 feet without stopping the day she came home, then 40, then she kept going.
Carol didn't have connections, didn't have a lawyer on retainer, didn't have money to spare. She had one question. Why? That small, stubborn why opened a file that changed 41 lives. The system counted on her exhaustion. She asked anyway. Now stay with me, because the next story, a teacher, 22 years in the same school district, not fired, retired, with a party and a balloon and a card signed by 37 people. And 2 days later, a check in the mail. For $12. I'm going to tell you what she did with that check, and you are not going to believe how this ends.
The $12 check.
I spent 22 years teaching kids that other teachers had given up on. Autism, cognitive delays, behavioral challenges. The kids who were shuffled from room to room until someone decided to stop shuffling. I was that someone. On my last day, the district threw a small party in the staff lounge. Costco cake, a balloon that said congratulations, and a card signed by 37 colleagues. I smiled at every single one of them, and I meant it. 2 days later, I got my final benefit package in the mail. Opened it in the kitchen, still in my pajamas, coffee in my hand. Inside, a check. $12. and a letter saying my accrued benefit calculation had been, quote, processed per district policy 7.4.2.b. I looked at that number. $12. 22 years. $12. I didn't cry. I actually laughed because I thought, this can't be real. This is a mistake. It was not a mistake.
I requested a meeting with Patricia Vance, Director of Human Resources for the Maricopa Unified School District. Patricia Vance was the kind of administrator who believed that rules were rules, and that anyone questioning them was, implicitly, questioning her. She explained the $12 check in 4 sentences. Your original hire date was August 1999. Under the 2008 restructuring agreement, teachers hired before 2003 who did not opt into the new benefit structure retained their original plan. Your original plan accrues at a different rate. The $12 reflects your net accrual under that plan. I said, I was never told. I was under a different plan. You signed the acknowledgement form at the time of the restructuring. What acknowledgement form? It would have been distributed in September 2008. I'd like to see my copy. You would need to submit a public records request for that. Processing time is 45 to 90 business days. Of course it is. I nodded, calmly, stood up, shook Patricia Vance's hand, and went home to call an education benefits attorney. His name was Marcus Felt. He listened for 45 minutes. Then he asked, Sandra, do you know if any other teachers from your hiring cohort had the same issue? I thought about it. Dorothy, same hire year. Margaret, same year. And Thomas, who retired 2 years earlier and mentioned the check being confusing. I think I do. Marcus filed records requests on behalf of 7 former teachers, all hired between 1998 and 2002. All of them had received benefit checks under $100 at retirement. The highest was $67. The lowest was $4. The acknowledgement form from 2008? 5 of the 7 had never signed it. The records showed it had been sent once, by mass email, with no follow-up. District policy required a signed original in each personnel file. Only 2 files had one. Marcus sent a formal demand letter to the district's legal team. 2 weeks later, no response. 3 weeks later, a boilerplate denial. Sandra sat with that denial for one evening. Then she called a reporter she had met at a school board meeting 2 years earlier. Her name was Ana Reyes. She worked for the Arizona Republic. Sandra, if what you're telling me is accurate, this isn't just your case. This is a story. Can you get me the records? Ana spent 6 weeks. She didn't find 7 cases. She found 61. 61 teachers hired between 1997 and 2003. 61 retirement checks under $100. Total amount owed, $2.3 million in unpaid benefits. The story ran on a Sunday. The headline read, District shorted retired teachers millions in benefits. And next to the headline, a photo. My photo, in my classroom, with my kids in the background. I looked at that photo for a long time. Then I folded the newspaper, set it on the table, and went to make coffee. Patricia Vance gave a statement. It said, This was an administrative oversight that we deeply regret. The school board voted to launch an independent audit. 3 months later, the results came back. 61 affected employees, $2.3 million in unpaid benefits. With interest, $2.9 million total. The district paid every dollar. With a formal written apology, read into the public record by the board president, Patricia Vance left the district at the end of the school year. Pursuing other opportunities, per the official statement, I received my check 3 months later, $38,447. I framed both checks, the $12 one first, bought the frame at Target for $8.99. The irony was not lost on me. They hung side by side on the living room wall. Visitors would ask about them. I would tell the story. Today I teach 2 days a week. By choice. Same kids, same small chairs, same work that always felt like the most important thing in the world. The difference is, nobody owes me anything now. And that, I discovered, is a very good feeling. The $12 check is still there. Sometimes I stop in front of it when I walk past. Not with anger, not anymore. With something close to gratitude. Because those $12 made me ask why. And the answer was worth $2.9 million.
Sandra could have deposited that check and moved on. That's what they were counting on. Every system built on injustice counts on your exhaustion, counts on you being too busy, too hurt, too alone to act. Sandra was tired. She was hurt. She was alone at the beginning. She acted anyway. And 60 other teachers took a deep breath when she did. Now, I promised you 3 stories tonight, and I promised you the third one was the most intense. I kept that promise. A man in Columbus, Ohio, his name is Ray Delaney, retired, widowed, just wanted peace. What he found was Denise Hartwell. And what Denise didn't know about Ray Delaney, didn't know one thing, is going to put a smile on your face that you won't be able to wipe off. Stay with me.
The board member.
I moved into Sycamore Glen in the fall of 2021, newly widowed, 3 years into retirement, looking for quiet. What I found was Denise Hartwell. Denise had been HOA president for 4 years. She ran Sycamore Glen like a small country she had personally founded. She had a written warning for a flag that was 2 inches too low on the pole, a hearing notice for a trash can left out on a Saturday morning, a fine for a garden hose visible from the street. I got my first warning in my 2nd week. The letter said, "Resident Ray Delaney, Unit 14. Your mailbox color does not conform to Sycamore Glen's standard R7 Colonial White, Sherwin-Williams number 7012. You have 30 days to repaint or face a fine of $150 per week." I looked at my mailbox. It was white, the same white it had been for the 11 years the previous owner lived there. I repainted it, bought the exact can, Colonial White, Sherwin-Williams, number 7012. 3 weeks later, another warning, this one for the doormat. In 6 months, 11 formal warnings, 3 fines. I paid them, I took notes, and I started reading.
I spent 31 years as a municipal code inspector for the city of Columbus. I knew exactly what a regulation looked like. And I knew exactly what it looked like when someone was applying it selectively. I started mapping it. Every warning issued in Sycamore Glen over the past 4 years, public record, available in HOA meeting minutes. I cross-referenced them with the properties, the dates, the violation types. What I found? Of the 94 formal warnings issued under Denise Hartwell's tenure, 71 had gone to 7 properties. Those 7 properties were owned by residents who had voted against Denise in the last board election. The remaining 23 warnings went to the other 38 households. I also found 3 instances where Denise had approved variances, exceptions to the rules, for board members' properties. One variance allowed a board member's boat to stay in the driveway for 14 months. The rule allowed 7 days. Another allowed a board member to repaint their home a color not in the approved palette. In writing, Denise approved it as a reasonable aesthetic interpretation. I documented everything. In 2 notebooks, kept 1 copy at home, mailed 1 to a safety deposit box. The habit of a man who spent 3 decades watching people destroy evidence. In January 2024, Denise proposed a special assessment. $2,400 per household. Stated purpose, infrastructure improvements, no specific projects named, no vendor bids attached, no contractor identified. I raised my hand. What specifically will this assessment fund? Can we see the contractor quotes? Denise looked at me with that particular kind of patience. That isn't patience at all. The board has evaluated the needs of the community and made this determination collectively. If you'd like to review the supporting documents, you can submit a written request to the Administrative Committee. When does the Administrative Committee meet? Quarterly. I sat back down. I had my 2 notebooks, 31 years of documentation experience, and I had received a call, 2 days earlier, from the City of Columbus Department of Community Standards. The city had been receiving complaints about Sycamore Glen for 2 years. Selective enforcement. Possible misuse of HOA funds. They needed an independent consultant to conduct compliance audit. Someone who knew the regulations. Someone who lived in the community. Someone like Ray Delaney, retired 31-year code inspector. I said yes very quietly. I want to be clear. Do I need to disclose this to the HOA board while the investigation is active? The city attorney said, not during the active investigation period. Standard protocol. You're acting in your professional capacity as a contracted consultant, not as a resident. Those are separate roles. I thanked them, paid the $2,400 assessment, wrote the check with exceptional calm. The audit took 6 weeks. I had access to every HOA financial record, meeting minute, and variance approval for the past 4 years. I had already done most of the work. I just needed the official standing. The findings: selective enforcement, documented across 71 of 94 formal warnings with clear correlation to voting records, financial irregularities, $34,000 in vendor payments over 2 years, paid to a single entity with no contract on file. That entity was a landscaping company registered in the name of Denise Hartwell's husband. Unapproved assessment, the $2,400 special assessment, had no supporting documentation and was not properly authorized under Ohio HOA statutes. The city delivered the report to the Sycamore Glen Board at an emergency meeting. Denise Hartwell had not been told who had conducted the audit. She found out when the city's representative introduced the consultant. The audit was conducted by Mr. Ray Delaney, a certified municipal inspector retained by the City of Columbus. Mr. Delaney is also a resident of Sycamore Glen, Unit 14. The room was silent for 4 seconds. I watched Denise's face. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't performing. I just set the audit report on the table in front of her. Flat, carefully, like it was evidence. Waitcha called, which it was. The board voted to remove Denise Hartwell as president. 4-1. She voted against. The $2,400 assessment was voided and refunded to all 42 households. The city referred the financial findings to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office for review. I cashed my reimbursement check, donated $1,200 to a neighborhood youth program, kept the other $1,200 for the 3 cans of paint I'd bought over 2 years for that mailbox. I'm still in Unit 14, still in Sycamore Glen. The new board president is Dorothy Nguyen. She's lived there for 9 years. She once got a warning for her wind chimes. She called me after the vote. Why did you wait so long? I thought about it. I didn't want to be angry. Angry people miss things. I wanted to be thorough. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you for being thorough, Ray."
Ray had the tools from day one. The knowledge, the experience, the instinct to document everything. He chose when to use them. That's not patience as weakness. That's precision as power. There are people in this world who react in the moment, and there are people who wait for the right moment. Ray waited for the right moment, and when it came, he set the report on the table with a calm that was worth more than any confrontation. 3 people tonight: Carol, Sandra, Ray. None of them were powerful. None of them had lawyers on retainer or connections at the top. They had something else. Carol had a question. Why? Sandra had a phone number. 1 reporter. Ray had a notebook. and 31 years of knowing exactly what he was looking at. Here's what I think. The systems that failed them were counting on something very specific. They were counting on exhaustion, on the idea that most people, when denied, when shortchanged, when fined for the wrong shade of white, would just accept it and move on. These three didn't accept it. And I want to be clear, that's not easy. That takes something. Something I'm not sure there's a good word for. I'll let you name it yourself. Now, next time, I want to tell you about a nurse in Seattle, 12 years at the same hospital. She was called into HR on a Thursday afternoon. She thought it was a performance review. It was not. And what she discovered in that meeting room on that Thursday afternoon completely changed the direction of her life. And not in the way you're thinking. I'll see you then. Take care of yourselves.